your attribute on that? What was that attribute?
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of SEO Fight Club. I am just waiting for the YouTube chat to appear. It's going pretty slowly. There it is. All right, pop out the YouTube chat, and we'll say hello over there. And today we are going to talk about a few things. So first, I'll want to talk about some of the news headlines because I know people are interested in today's news. It's kind of a big deal for a lot of people. And then we're going to talk about a topic we've never really talked about before, which is enterprise and in-house SEO. We'll kind of define those terms and we'll talk about the challenges and we'll also make some connections on how enterprise SEO knowledge can benefit client and agency SEO, because a lot of it is about convincing people to do the things they need to do. And some of that knowledge is valuable to everyone. So if you ever thought, I have nothing in common with an enterprise SEO, well, maybe you do, just not in the way you think. But with that, I want to mention our sponsor, Magic PR. So they're helping us out with some PR testing. And so if you're looking for some referring domains, press releases are a great and affordable way to do that. That's the SEO angle of PR. There's a whole lot more to public relations, though, and if you reach out to Madge at Magic PR, he'll be happy to talk with you about what you need. So there's the whole legitimate public relations side of things, too. That's a bit outside of my SEO domain. So I like press releases for the SEO utility that they can bring to me. That's my main interest. Because I am not a public relations professional. I am an SEO and I am judged on SEO things. But keep in mind that press releases have a lot of potential to give you referring domains. And for the past 2 years, referring domains, when leveraged correctly, have been stronger and more cost effective than going after backlinks, which are bigger. And so when you go to your backlink tools, I would say uh, compare the backlinks numbers to the referring domain numbers. And what you'll see very quickly is the referring domain numbers are smaller, they're safer, they're faster, and they're cheaper. And so why wouldn't you start with competing with referring domains before competing on backlinks, which are bigger, slower, more expensive, and high risk? So, just give it some thought before you deploy your strategy. And I've been using press releases forever, really, but in earnest in SEO on the referring domain strategy for about 2 years now, and to pretty good success. But there's a few things about it, a few aspects to it that you have to know. Uh, your press release has to be on topic for the keyword you're trying to rank. It has to link to the page you're trying to rank. And not all press release companies want to do a lot of that. So there's only a few that are really okay with that. So I don't know. Talk to Madge, find out if it meets your needs. If it doesn't, that's okay too. There's more than one way to rank a page. So don't let anybody tell you there's only one way. All right. So let's talk about spring training. Down to the wire, people, last chance. They are doing Last I heard, they are doing online in addition to in person. So talk to Terry Samuels or go to the uh, domain name, check it out. You can reach out to them. I believe if you are overseas and you can't travel here, you can possibly attend it online now. So that's a last minute change. They are getting close to selling out. So do, check it out if you have any interest. You're about to run out of time. For the online viewing for the stream seats, there is a finite number they can stream live. All right. So they only have like 100 of these, and when they're out, they're out. So don't wait if you're interested. Otherwise, you probably won't get in on the online streaming tickets. All right. With that, let's talk about the news. So the crazy update continues to be crazy. So uh, Google, however, I want to shout out, and I know that people give me shit when I give Google props. I don't do it often, but every time I've done it, people have raked me over the coals for saying something nice about Google. And, I'm far from a Google shill. So, I think if you know me at all, I am usually very harsh on Google. I hold their feet to the fire. I speak truth to power. Um, and I try to hold them accountable where I can. All right. And so this dumpster fire of an update, and that's kind of how I see it, because it's like, let's change everything. Roll it back, roll it back. Oh no, put it back, put it back. It's kind of what it feels like they're doing. Um, and so yeah, it kind of looks like a dumpster fire, but this is different and uniquely different for kind of like the first time ever with Google. And I just want to point it out that Google's being accountable this time. They have their spokesperson coming and saying, hey, hang on, wait for it to complete before making changes. This is going to go up and down a lot, and it's going to take weeks. All right. Google is saying it. You can go and quote Google to your employer. And so normally what happens, and I have clients right now who would normally be cooked. And so they did a bunch of SEO leading up before this event happened. And then, their site started to go up, and then it tanked. And then normally that's where these like enterprises would say the SEO is awful, they're fired. But it coincides with Google saying we rolled out an update. It's very volatile. It's going to take weeks, and you need to wait before deciding what to do. So now the SEO can say, it's not my SEO. We need to wait and see where things land. All right. And it worked. The enterprise didn't blame the SEO. And so if it happened for one of my people, it's probably happening all over. And so this is a big deal, because normally what Google would do in the past is while everybody's getting fired, they'd sit there and smile and not say anything. And so this is different. It's different. All right. And it's a good thing, because Google being accountable for the volatility that Google causes, that's new. And it's good for us, because normally us SEOs, we took all the blame for it. What do you think on this one, Charles?
So it's funny you should say that, because I've often felt that when they do these updates and there's all this disarray and angst, I've often felt like they revel in it. Oh, good. SEOs are all upset and all worked up and all angry. Oh, good. We're doing our job. It's nice to see them actually say, hey guys, we're doing something here. They're at least acknowledging that what they do impacts everyone else's business. And it's nice to see that. Up until recently, they've kind of had that look, you know, if we rank you, great. If we don't, that's your tough luck. And you can't blame us. We can do whatever we want. We're a private company. And they're taking a different, they think, look, we understand that we're impacting you. They're acting more like um, I guess like the cable provider who, yeah, you know, cable's down. They're not changing, they're not fixing it right away, but they are at least acknowledging, yep, it's down and we're working on it. So I appreciate that, Google.
Yep, yep. But I thought I'd point that out because we actually want this behavior to continue. So, while the update is a dumpster fire and everybody hates it, it's okay to voice that, but maybe also put a line or two out there that you like the fact that they're being accountable for the disruption they've caused, and that's a good thing.
And in Google's defense, I can confirm they are definitely doing something. I watch the logs, I watch the bots. Right now, the number one bot hitting our sites is the desktop bot, which means Google doesn't like their mobile bot. And I also see that as of Friday, they launched another bot, an updated version, a fix. It's not running anywhere as near, what it would be if it was running. It's obviously just in a test mode. It's only going at like a couple percentage points. So they're clearly working on something. They're trying to figure out what's going on themselves.
Yeah, yeah. I have one client who came to me who was part of the recent manual actions, which blew my mind because it's been years since there's even been an echo of that. And then all of a sudden, there's this huge flood of manual actions. And I'm looking at this situation, and it appears in this client's case, what happened is that the manual reviewer manually considered the website AI generated and penalized pure spam. But the problem is that it's not a pure AI play. They had a team of many editors, and it's a mixture. And so that begs the question, if on manual review, if you're using a human being as your AI detector, which I think is fundamentally flawed on many levels, how can people do that? So let's change the example hypothetically. What if it's a publishing house that has 50 writers and they're publishing human written content for humans, and one of the writers decides to take a lazy day, does all of his articles with AI. Google manually gives a pure web spam to them and doesn't tell them what the offending content is. How can the publisher take any action to fix that problem? You're not going to tell us what the problem content is, so we can't find out what the problem is and who the offender was on our team of human beings, one of which took a lazy day. All
So
right, so there is no recourse to a legitimate business with an honest problem.
So I worked for a company 15 plus years ago that got a manual penalty, and that was for linking. And what I learned from that process was that it was arbitrary and capricious. Yeah, there was zero information. That we did get a message that we got a manual penalty. It told us that it was and I'm gonna have to paraphrase because it's been a long time. It was a limited penalty due to link spam, and they essentially told us it was for a specific page. Although I don't know if that was the exact wording, but it came across it was a specific page and a specific problem. So we started looking at it, and back then, yeah, we had purchased some links. So I looked up, like, okay, clearly they busted us for these links. Took care of them. This was right when the disavow came out. So we took care of what we could. We disavowed everything else. We reached back out and say, hey, look, we cleaned everything up. Everything should be cool. And then what we ended up going through over the next several months, I don't know if the manual reviewer, if they change manual reviewers, or if that person decided to have a bad day, they actually changed it and said, "Oh no, you've got bad links all over your site." And like, well, wait a minute, this whole penalty was about one, a certain number of links on a certain page. They expanded the scope of the audit, so to speak. Still wouldn't give us any information. After a couple go rounds, we finally got some feedback as to the offending links. And the funny thing is, they weren't even purchase links; they were pure editorial links. So, and then this kind of goes back to a person decided this was AI content, but they won't show any proof as to how did they make that determination, and that's not cool.
And before people jump at me, I went and looked through the website, and let me put it this way. If you would have gone, 3-4 months before AI broke, you would have zero problems with this website. Zero. Like it would have been better than most. All right. So it's not like the site was actually pure spam. It was definitely a subjective call.
Let's also remember that Google's working with publishers to create AI content. There was an article on Adweek a couple weeks ago about that. So I find that humorous that they're going after AI content while they themselves are helping people use AI content.
Well, I think the problem is this manual review. They're turning people into people with abnormally huge amounts of power, and there's no review or recourse. And so, you can request reconsideration. Well, we all know how that goes. You have to delete half your site, disavow all your links, blame the old SEO, swear it'll never happen again without knowing what the problem was because they don't give you the information. So you have to make all this bullshit, just I don't know. It makes
Yeah,
no sense. If Google wanted the problem to be fixed, they should tell you what the problem is.
yeah.
That is the logical, sensible way to fix a problem. This is more like Google being a just a I don't even know how to describe it properly, but it's like Google is mad at you and being passive aggressive and won't tell you why they're mad, and the relationship is over until you read their mind.
Yeah.
That is what Google is doing to websites.
That nails it perfectly.
And it's horrible and it's stupid. So this is not a genius playbook. It's not brilliant. It's not smart. It's not respectable. This part of Google is morons. And so I hope you realize that the reconsideration request with no detail on the problem was architected by a moron. And so there you go. So Google, fix that too while you're at it. All right. And that's my opinion alone. So don't blame Charles for it.
I
All
agree.
right. So Google, in their infinite wisdom, after coming after my contact for making lots of content as a publishing company and giving them a manual action for it, it's now coming out saying it's not spam. Thank you, Google. Thanks a lot. So I guess this makes you feel better, but probably shouldn't. So at least in the reconsideration request, this is one more thing we can quote.
I think this goes back to like so these kinds of quotes like just make good content, just make great content for users. That goes back into the same problem that you have, the fundamental problem with with reconsideration or with a manual penalty. No one's really defined what this means. I mean, clearly defined what is spam, what is great content, what's bad bulk content, what's good bulk content. Yeah, I'm sure people are shouting at me right now saying, yeah, look at eat. But then Google will come right out and say, no, eat's not a
Well,
ranking factor. So
well, yeah, here's the thing. I'll read it directly from the article. He said if you publish awesome content in bulk, Google loves awesome content. Thanks a lot. Now define how awesome is calculated.
Yeah,
All right.
clearly.
All right, there you go. And then finally, Google is changing leadership in the search team. Now, I see this being one of two possibilities. One is it's normal attrition, career attrition, and somebody wanted to move on or retire or something like this, and now there's somebody new. The other possibility is that this is a shakeup because Google search is a dumpster fire internally as well as externally. And so, I'm kind of looking at the situation going, okay, after years of no manual actions, there's suddenly a flood of manual actions, and there's a super heavy handed update that is now so chaotic. It's like, roll it back, roll it back. That kind of sounds like whip cracking to me. And like, somebody might have been upset with previous leadership, and the new leadership came in with a heads will roll mentality. And we're kind of seeing that blow up in their face. So, could be just normal career attrition, could be that the dumpster fire's internal and external. So, I don't know. What's your take on a leadership change up?
Yeah, whenever you see leadership change up in organizations, it's there's at the very least there's a strategic refocusing of the organization. If you remember Google, this might be going back a couple years. When I say a couple years, I'm probably thinking like 7 or 8 years now. They essentially came out and said, "Oh, AI is going to be able to handle everything. Our algorithm can just handle everything." And that was the same time they changed up their leadership, and the person that was in charge of their AI was now put in charge of search. The fact that we're now seeing a little bit of a change makes me wonder, okay, is the return to manual actions, is the return to manual reviewing coming back? If they decided they went too far in did the pendulum swing too far in the AI range? Yeah, I think there's a definite strategic change within Google. This isn't just coincidence.
And just to update everybody on the current state of what's still working, it still looks like the same rules of engagement for SEO. Rhinoplasty Plano style stuff is still ranking at the top. Stealth SEO still ranking at the top. Um, let's see what else is going on. There's Clint Butler's Nothing But Schema still ranking at the top. White text on a white background still ranking at the top. Um, yeah, the supplemental content play still working. AI content still working, but I do it different than most. I use it for supplemental content. I try to leave the main content alone. Um, so I at least know supplemental AI content still working. So I don't see big fundamental changes. So this would be, it looks to me like this, who knows, but a big part of it is probably backlinks. So if you have a spammy backlink profile, that would be something to maybe consider. Think about your practices on what types of links you're getting and how many and how you're getting them and how fast. So look into that. And link attrition is another thing. So if you're losing credit for links, you'll fall. And if Google is discounting links, then you need to reconsider link building. It's not that you were penalized, it's that some of your backlinks don't count. So you fell, you get more backlinks, you go back up. So, is that a penalty? Or is that just some of your backlinks got disqualified? So keep in mind that a lot of these spam updates are nothing but backlinks. All right. So with that, let me suspend the share and let me pull up some of my questions because I went and made questions. All right. So we're talking about enterprise and in-house SEO today. So we've been wanting to do this for a long time. I think the first thing we should do is kind of define those two things. So, an in house SEO is when you are hired as an employee of a business and you work full time on the SEO of that business. So, you have one client for all practical purposes. Um, and then enterprise SEO is when you're doing SEO for an established large scale business that, for all practical purposes, has made it. Like they're probably publicly traded, they probably have hundreds of employees, they have many business units. Historically, it's probably page rank 8 and up for the most part. Fortune 10,000, if you want to think of it that way.
I would also add in there, Ted, that the bulk of your search is often brand. Um, it's 90% brand sometimes, and depending on the day of the week.
And and you probably have weblogs in enterprise SEO. This would be a good tell. If your weblogs grow by gigabytes a day, that's a good sign that you're enterprise caliber. You're at least relatable to enterprise scale problems. On the e-com side, I often refer to working without a safety net because when you make a problem in e-com SEO at that scale, you have caused a problem that'll do, $50,000 an hour of damage until you fix it, or more even. And so that's the working without a safety net. And so you make a mistake, it's painful. It's very painful, very costly. You have to account for it to executive teams. And so it's frightening work in that regard. So I don't know that it's a great job for everyone because I think it can be high pressure and you have to kind of know how to navigate some pretty tough situations. Do you feel that kind of pressure on your work?
Yeah, it's you end up with problems, and I mean it's the same kind of similar problems that you'll find as an agency or consultant, but it's usually times 10. You'll have different departments. You'll have people that are gunning for you that has nothing to do with whether you're doing a great job or not. You could be doing a great job and you'll have people gunning for you. You'd be doing a horrible job, you've got people supporting you. And there's a level of politics involved because there's just so many people. And yeah, to your point, the organizations are extremely complicated. There's multiple CMSs involved. There's multiple teams working on multiple CMSs, so you can't even sometimes fix what you fix here, but then these other properties or these other parts of the same property have to be fixed now as well. And you have to work with a whole different team and a whole different technology stack often.
And
Um,
and gatekeepers.
oh,
Some
yes.
business units won't let you do the job.
Yeah, that's a big thing. The gatekeepers that so a lot of folks in large organizations, enterprise organizations, they're terrified of making the wrong decision. So they make the decision to never make a decision. And you'll find a lot of people like that. And yeah, you come to folks saying, "Hey, we need to add an H1 to the page. Put a little more content." And when I say a little more content, you know, Ted, you'd laugh at the amount of content I want to put on a page. 3 sentences. Multiple stakeholders, and then ultimately a big gatekeeper will try to stop it just because they're afraid that if you make a change, will it impact their percentage somehow? Um, and they don't want it. They don't want any changes because again, change can hurt them. So they'll just do whatever they can to stop change.
Yep. So if you had to describe, let's make it a list of four primary things. What are the components of enterprise SEO in your opinion? What is the job?
So number one, you have to be organized. Um, you have to be organized and you have to have a vision. I don't know if that's the same thing or not. Maybe there's two different things. You need to know what is your vision, what is it you're trying to do, both strategically and tactically. So, for example, you can say our vision is to grow. Strategically, we want to grow the evergreen content on this properties domain. And then tactically, what are we going to do to get that done? And then how are you going to get this specific thing done? You need designers, you need developers, you need this. How are you going to get those resources? Maybe you do or don't have those resources. So that's where the organization, and it's not just organization like your day to day, what am I going to work on today, but just your systems organization, understanding that this is the person you can go to get that done. This is the person you can go to that get that done. And you've brought it up multiple times, consensus building. So I'd call that maybe the number three. So there's like the organization, there's the strategic and vision, there's the consensus building. It's being able to speak with people and explain to them, here's why we want to do this. We want to do this for these reasons. Here's the benefit we'll gain by doing this. Um, and I would say 30% of my job is often just risk management, keeping people from breaking the site. Another 30% of my job is trying to fix and or enhance the current technology stack that we're on. And then then that last 30% or 33%, I realize I'm not making 100, would be growth. Because we're already enterprise. It's not that we don't want growth. Yes, we want growth. Yes, we need growth. But often not dropping is as good as growth in enterprise.
That makes a lot of sense. How do you scale your efforts? Like, how do you do the job when some of these businesses have millions of pages?
So yeah, that's the hard part. So we'll do efforts. Um, you have to. So I had a director once that would basically, poo-poo any idea that didn't have millions and millions of clicks involved in it. And that was frustrating because I'm of the mindset that you can have death by 1,000 cuts, but you can also win. You can also, having 1,000 good ideas is just as good as having one good idea. The nice thing about that as well is it diversifies your traffic. One bad idea or one bad day or week isn't going to kill you. With that said, but yeah, the scale is the problem. So I always take a step back, like, what are we doing right now? Where are we getting traffic? Are we not just doing what we could be doing? Like, every domain has their one or two top terms. Like, okay, what are we doing with our top terms? What are we doing with our brand? Often folks forget how important brand is. These large organizations understand the power of their brands, but if you Google the brand or Google variations of the brand, sometimes they're not ranking, or not ranking well, or properties that aren't friendly are ranking. And so you end up working on things that the quote unquote average SEO would never even think about. If you're working for Joe's Plumber, you really wouldn't worry too much about the brand name or how it ranks, because that's not really an issue. But for some of these larger things, there are people saying things about your company that may or may not be positive. So you have to make sure you protect that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, one of the big mistakes I see in enterprise SEO is sloppy handling of the brand. One of the most notorious examples of that is Sears Roebuck, the department store. They have so many incarnations of their brand that Google will actually split test it site wide. They have Sears with a capital S, Sears with a lowercase s, capital S, Sears.com, lowercase s, Sears.com. They have capital S, Sears, comma, Inc. They have lowercase Sears, comma, Inc. They have their Sears Roebuck brand. They have, they have Sears all caps. They have Sears all caps with lowercase.com. They have Sears all caps with uppercase.com. And Google will split test this stuff. Google comes in and out of seasons where site wide it's going to start split testing all the brand incarnations and across an enterprise. And that's what's happening here is nobody made a brand presentation rule
Mhm.
at the enterprise level. Nobody's enforcing it. and you need somebody to go around on the consensus building saying, hey guys, you're causing a lot of volatility site-wide in our rankings by being inconsistent with branding. So we need everybody to use the brand this way. Came from the top. This is what it is. Everybody must find all brand mentions and make it conform.
You know,
And that would be like a day. That's a 1 day thing, usually in enterprise SEO. Have you had like a lot of instances like that, or is that like a once a year type of thing?
yeah, it's a constant thing. We're constantly running into those kinds of things, especially if you have an enterprise with multiple brands. So you brought up you kind of touched on something that's really, really important that a lot of people, that I think I enjoy it for. That's why I enjoy enterprise SEO and in-house SEO as much as I do, is that you end up, yeah, I'm an SEO. Yes, I'm doing SEO, but there's a chunk of your job where you're talking about brand. You're talking about the importance of having a consistent brand, or how do you name products, and there's all these weird business decisions that people make that end up impacting you, that show up with SEO. I can't tell you it's interesting. SEO, especially with large organizations, ends up becoming like the default webmaster too, because we find all the problems. There's different teams controlling different parts of the website. That happens with the technology, that happens with brand. So we've had things where company changes the brand and we change all our logos, but Google's still showing the old favicon. And the CEO sees the old favicon on Google and flips out that the team didn't update it. And it turns out no, it was updated. For whatever reason, Google hasn't picked it up yet. And then you get this weird mix of, there's the making, now you have to educate people, let you know that Google doesn't always change things automatically. But you also have this very technical deep dive to figure out, why is Google taking its time, or is it not seeing what you want to see? Your Sears example is perfect, where
Yeah.
you change something and Google may not see the change. It may not know it's there. And because you
Well,
have such a large system, it could be seeing something that everybody forgot about.
and Google has a long memory. In the Quora community, we have a tool called the volatility tool, and it can highlight Google's split testing of content. And we one second. We found that Google, in their long memory, was split testing a version of a page that was 4 years old. So we know that Google can remember 4 years back on a page and split test. Now,
Yeah.
how does that work? Our theory is that there's these things called protocol buffers over at Google. It's kind of like a permanent record. You can think about it like a file folder, and your website grades go in the file folder, and the dossier about your website, the official one, goes in your folder. So that's what these protocol buffers are. And what we think is that Google is remembering like the last, 5 or 10 incarnations of a page. And if you don't change the page very often, then 4 years ago could be in the last five updates. And so we don't see that all the time, but we do see it in the field, and that's kind of what we think is going on. And so, yeah, if the fave icon, the old fave icon, is still in search, it could be that you forgot to change it. It could be that Google's remembering it. It could be that part of your website you have it here, and on another part you have something else. And so your site is conflicting with itself. So yeah, that's hard to diagnose, and you need to get everybody to make a change.
Yeah, and you talk to people that you never would have spoken with. You speak with ops people. You're like, okay, and you suddenly find out that somebody on some distant team, oh yeah, yeah, we redirect all Google bots that are looking for this resource over to that resource. It's some weird little change someone will make that nine times out of 10, no one cares about until you make a change and you need Google to see the change.
Yeah, when I was in enterprise SEO, I found that there not everybody, but there's like 10% of the organization hates the SEO, just flat out hates the SEO, like wants to see you suffer, wants to get you fired. And kind of the reason they hate the SEO in-house or enterprise is because you're the no guy. You're the pseudo IT guy who's telling them they can't have the thing they want.
Yep.
And so they use their executive power to go whisper in the ears of higher executives saying, we could have all this growth if it wasn't for that guy right there, right there, that guy. He's the culprit. We got to fire him so we can get the growth we need.
Yep.
And that's kind of what's happening. And then you need like your executives to come in and say, no, he's presenting, he's preventing a disaster from happening because these people aren't listening and they're going to harm the business and cause a wider scale disaster. And we don't want to fire people who prevent disasters, because you know what happens when you fire people who prevent disasters? Disasters happen.
I have charts that can show that actually. So Ted, it's funny. This is a great example. Your example is perfect because I've had so many organizations I've worked at where I was the guy who was constantly saying no. And the moment I left, it was like a dam burst. And it was like suddenly they could do all these things. And you'll remember at Rockstars when I gave the presentation about migrations, place I worked for, 6 months after I left, maybe 9, their organic traffic just like they lost 90% of the organic traffic. And when you looked at it, somebody changed the CMS and they did
Yeah.
it in a way that was not SEO friendly because they didn't have an SEO to stop them and say, don't do it. And I know for a fact who it was, and I know what they changed. And I know they had been asking me for a year, we want to change this, we want to change this. I'm like, I wouldn't recommend changing that, guys. It could hurt us. I wasn't there to stop them.
So what do you do to push back on that constant 10% hate that's sent your way?
So that's where the consensus building becomes very, very important. So you have to, because they'll do exactly what you say. They'll go around you, they'll go above you, they'll try to go a couple steps above you to say, hey, this group's is causing all these problems and they're stopping us from doing what we need to do. You need to make sure that you've explained to your boss and your boss's boss, and hopefully your boss's boss's boss, why you do what you do. What is SEO? Why is it important? And what should we be doing and what should we not be doing? And what I always try to explain to folks is stop being the no guy. So I learned that years ago, like just being the straight up no guy was a kind of it wasn't a good way to do. So I had a whiteboard and I drew a bunch of start with a smiley face, then like a little grin, then a straight face, then a frown, then like an unhappy, and then like a nuclear bomb. I had like a whole range. And when people would come to me and ask me questions, then they'd think, well, where's that in the range? And we say, well, this is up here or it's down here. And then we could talk about how do we bring it up a few notches? Because just being the straight up no guy didn't work. So I had to say, like, how do we come to something that everyone can be like, all right, this will work. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a little SEO. And I hate doing it. I don't like doing it, but sometimes you do. And there have been times where you have to do it for political reasons, and there's times you have to do it just purely because that's what the numbers say. Even though, yeah, I want it to rank better. If we did that, it would cause these other cascade effects that would hurt the business more. And it's better to take this SEO hit than to hurt the business more. So that's the big part of it is you always give people a range. And I try to let people know, hey, I'm here to help you get done what you want to get done. You need more subscribers to this part of the service or something. No problem. What do you want to do? There's a problem there. Could we try something like this? Or here's what I've seen other competitors do. Is there a reason why we don't do it that way? You have to be collaborative. And then you stop being the no guy and you become the maybe guy. That's the best you're going to do. Go from no to maybe. No better than that.
What I want to point out to everyone is a lot of SEOs, they're like, oh, I'm not an enterprise SEO. That's not me. I'm a local SEO, or I'm a small business or a medium business SEO, but not enterprise. And I'm not in-house. So none of this applies to me. That's what they say. None of this applies. But it does, because you are situationally gonna be an enterprise SEO. You are situationally gonna deal with in-house SEOs. And so these problems have come across your table. So you will find that you're working with a client. He has an engineering team that doesn't want to do what you're recommending. That's an enterprise SEO problem. That's where consensus building and this wisdom comes into play. How do you get a reluctant developer to do what they need to do in the best interests of the company without turning it into a turf war?
Or your client hires an expert at another thing, whatever that other thing is, and they start making recommendations that would hurt your SEO. Or hopefully you've been doing a good job with your client and they've been growing steadily. And now they're no longer a small company. They're at the very least a medium-sized company. And now they grow. And now they hire a new marketing director who may or may not like SEO. The owner of the company has a nephew who does SEO, wants to give their opinions. Like all these weird things will pop up in a small or medium-sized company just as well as it would in a large.
So I was in the in-house enterprise space for better part of 20 years. All right. And what a lot of SEOs don't realize is that just about every marketing agency on Madison Avenue and in LA, all of them, all the big shops, they wanted the job. They wanted me to get fired and them to get hired. And I held them at bay for 20 years. All right. And so you better believe that the same thing is happening to Charles. Every top agency on Madison Avenue is gunning for his job. And so that kind of brings us to in-house. What can we do in order to protect our role? And so in-house, it's different than client work because in client work, your SEO strategy is always to bridge you to the next 3-month contract or next 6-month contract or whatever you have, your time frame of contract, you have to show results within that time frame, but you can never think long term. You can never act long term. And that's a huge disadvantage. And so I spent a lot of my time making sure as an in-house, as an enterprise SEO, that not only am I showing 3-month improvements, but I'm also working a long-term strategy. Where do we want to land in 2, 3, 5 years? And it was in that way that I was able to work magic that no Madison Avenue agency could ever even quote a price for. Is priceless compared to what they could offer costing for. One of the things I was known for at that time was taking all of page 1 and half of page 2 for large amounts of keywords. No Madison Avenue agency could do that. Like my audits, if almost nobody on earth has seen my audits, and that's by design, because my audits are so comprehensive that they spoil audits permanently forever. So when you're sending free audits to one of my customers, they're going to go, this is a flimsy piece of shit, and throw it away. And that's by design. And people look at my audits and they say, Ted, no human being would do an audit like this. You can't make money on. I lose money on the audit, but I gain a barrier to entry that's insurmountable by most agencies. And so you have to think like that if you're the in-house SEO, if you're the enterprise SEO. How can I make it so that everything external looks like a flimsy piece of crap compared to what the internal long-term investment is? And if they can't speak to the internal long-term investment, you've locked them all out. Do you do any of that long-term strategy that the client SEOs never get a chance?
Yeah, so that's a really good point you say about the agencies is they'll typically approach with one of two things. They'll come with a very specific tactic, or they'll come with some huge long-term, but no goal on how to get there. They'll say, you should be here in 5 years. Okay, that's great, but how are we going to get there? Or they'll say, you should do this. And again, they're only worried about the next 6 months or whatever. Again, I try to I build out the long-term vision. I have that's the strategy. Then I have the individual tactics that builds us to that. There's things I know that I want us to do that I've been told, oh no, we can't do that. And I'm like, okay. I just kind of put it in the back of my file cabinet, my mental file cabinet, and I just slowly work towards it. And then I've trying to think of an example. I've yet to come to an example where I brought something to a company, been told that we can't do it for whatever reason we can't do it, and not had it implemented 6 months, 10 months, 2 years, 3 years later. We had a property that launched, and I told them we should definitely do this. And I was told, nope, that's not the business plan. That's not what our business is about. I said, okay. To use a honey quote, I guess advantage isn't for everybody. But within a year and a half, they came back to me and said, hey, remember that thing you mentioned, Charles? We might be interested in that now. And that's perfect. And dusted it off and said, here's how we're going to implement it. And actually, it's worked out really, really well for them. So it's that stick-to-itiveness. You have to. I was described recently as a dog with a bone. And I took pride in that. Actually, I don't consider that an insult. You have to be able to stick to, here's where we're going to go. You can't let yourself be easily wavered. And I would do the same thing with whether it was a client or client work, consulting work, whether I worked in an agency. I would really operate the same way. At the last spring training last year, Kevin, they had a couple people talking about how to, about working with, as an agency, working with clients. And I took a lot of takeaways from those for just building internal stakeholders and working with stakeholders internally within a large organization. I think there's a lot of skills that cross over between, small and large SEOs. I don't really see much of a designation. It's really more about the person than it is about the job.
Yeah, I think the difference between an SEO that is, historically a low page rank SEO, helping, small websites perform like medium websites in search. The difference between that job and the enterprise SEO, the guy doing SEO for IBM. The difference between those two jobs is largely going to be philosophy on link building and kind of the types of work that you're doing. So, like as an enterprise, you want page edits made, but you are very unlikely to be the guy doing the edits. Whereas the small business trying to behave like a medium business, they want you, the SEO, to edit the page yourself.
I couldn't edit our site even if I wanted to. I don't have the access, and I haven't had access to sites in years and years. It's been a long time since I could go into a site. I keep my own sites and I run my own affiliate sites partially just because I enjoy doing it and I don't get a chance to do it in my day job. So it's my chance to code a little HTML or do some schema or something like that.
Yeah, and so in many respects, SEO has meta layers the same way like IT and development groups have layers. In those groups, you have people who program computers, and then the next layer up, you have people who program computers. And so enterprise SEO is often that meta layer up. We are people who know SEO, but we have to program people and business units to program SEO. And so that's kind of the change in the game at those levels. But yeah, the work at the bottom is typically very different work than the work at the top. And oftentimes you'll find that a lot of enterprise SEOs don't have the skill set to make the phone ring for a local plumber, like because the job's too different. That's not what they did for 10 years.
Well, we can
Uh,
learn things. I can learn a lot from someone who ranks local plumbers. I know when Mike and Brock speak about a lot of their local SEO stuff, now they have to use different tactics to do what they want to do. But once I understand the concept of how this works or why what they're doing works, well, gee, I could do that really easily using different processes.
Yeah.
I've got some scale. I have scales that they don't have, so I can get these things done. I learn a lot
But
from those
but
kinds of things.
you're an you're an aberration. You're not a normal enterprise SEO. The normal enterprise SEO is out on Signals Lab telling everybody is morons for doing SEO the way they do it.
Yeah.
So
No,
you're very data driven and you're down in the trenches on learning new things about your skill set. And that kind of makes you a rarity in enterprise, in my opinion.
yeah, I'll say I probably am a unique individual.
Um,
And so one thing I want to say though, Ted, is often when we talk about enterprise and in-house, it ends up feeling very negative, like, oh God, I would never want to deal with that.
yeah,
Honestly, it's very positive. There's a lot of rewards. No lie, in the middle of this, I just got a little pop-up on my screen. I was looking at it, and somebody that I work with put a message on the company board so thousands of people can see this, and they specifically called me out saying, Charles Taylor, thank you for your commitment to making the company great. And it's like, you're not going to get that in a small organization. And that's nice. It's nice
yeah,
to know that what I do really makes an impact to an organization. I can see numbers like, wow, I helped make that big number. And that's always nice.
well,
Rewarding.
and here's the thing. Like you have to have the right personality for the job because being able to take the 10% hate and have a thick skin and do the right thing and work it out the proper way so that everybody's happy, not everybody can do that. Like some people, they take offense. They just carry that hurt and they stew on the hurt and they take it too personally when it's not meant to be too personal. So if you can't metabolize that kind of stress, if you don't have the thick skin for criticism and being able to come back in a constructive, positive way, it's going to be a very hard job. So yeah, kind of personality is kind of key to thriving in that environment. And the other thing is it's not a job where you can care a lot. And I know that sounds horrible, but honestly, it's a job where if you care too much, you're probably not going to last the long haul.
You'll stress
Uh,
yourself out. Yeah,
yeah,
if you get broken up over the fact that they just won't put that word in the title tag on the homepage, you gotta sometimes you just have to know how to let things go.
Yeah, so it kind of benefits, if you saw Office Space and after he was hypnotized and he had no worries, if you can walk in feeling like that every day, whether it goes your way or not, you will last forever. But if you get hurt every time you're wronged and you remember it for months and months and months, it's going to be a torturous existence. So I think personality matters and kind of not caring too much. Care a little, care some, but don't care too much. Caring too much makes you burn out too fast and you'll be short-lived.
Yeah, often it's understanding that the other teams have KPIs as well, and their KPIs they can sometimes conflict a little bit. And as long as it's also picking the right organization. I've been at large organizations that are not healthy organizations that are sometimes are very, very toxic. I've been in larger organizations. I think where I'm at right now is actually pretty healthy, where everyone's just trying to do the right thing. Sometimes they conflict, and then you just have to figure out, okay, how can we make it so it doesn't conflict too much? And if everybody's willing to give a little bit, we can have a better product. But yeah, if you have to be willing to accept 80% SEO sometimes, and that's tough. I still struggle with that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess the best way to articulate my last comment was care the right amount, which isn't too much. There should be care, but it's an art form. You got to balance it. It can't be so much that it would make you unhappy in the role. You have
Under,
to care the right amount.
You have to understand there's business decisions, and there's been plenty of times I've been in conversations. Look, if the business, quote unquote, the business wants to make a decision, then that's just what it is going to be. And as long as we're going into it eyes wide open, I've had lots of conversations with lots of VPs and above, and my quote is always the same. It's like, as long as we're going in with eyes wide open, guys make the decision that makes sense for you because they can see things I can't see. I'm down, often looking at a microscope and seeing things at a very, very detailed level. They've got a larger picture that they've got to deal with.
Yeah, when I was in enterprise, my goal, and I would tell everybody, victory is getting the ideas on the table for consideration. It's not the ultimate choice that's made. And so as long as you keep the good ideas coming, and that's the win, then everything else is out of your hands. And everything else is out of your hands. So really the best day-to-day victory is that part.
Sure.
Here's a great question. What are the most common SEO mistakes you see in the enterprise, and how can they be avoided?
The most common is
Yeah.
changing the URL structure regularly, redesigns. Enterprise loves redesigns. There's many reasons why they're important. They're important because there's always legacy systems. Because if you think about an organization, um, may have 10 different CMSs for one domain. And if each one was bought 1 year, and each one was bought 1 year after the other, that means you have a 10-year-old and a 9-year-old and 8-year-old CMS that has to be upgraded. Um, so there's things that have to be done. There's things where people want to upgrade and change things. The biggest mistake I see over and over again, and again, I showed these charts at a conference recently. Organizations are constantly hurting themselves by changing their URL structure and radically changing their site and not taking SEO into account.
All right. Stefan asks, what are some things we should not do or say when working with enterprise clients in SEO? So what scares away enterprises from consultants?
That's a really good question. So when you're approaching an enterprise, make sure you have a long-term vision. Don't go to them saying you need to build some backlinks to this page or you need to do this. Tactics usually don't help unless they have a very, very specific problem. If they have very specific, like, look, this, our our favicons not showing. Okay, you fix it by changing this small specific thing. Okay, that's an example where, yeah, specific tactic. But if if you're trying to get a large organization as your client, you want to go to them with a vision, say, this is where you should be. Here's why you should be there. I always had a 3-step process. I had, here's where we weren't, here's the opportunity, here's where our competitors are, here's where we are. And then it's not even really a discussion. It's, oh, okay, we should be doing that. It's rarely even, there's not even any consensus that needs to be built. I would then say something you should never do is never, if you are talking to somebody and you're trying to get them to hire you and they just maybe they just keep blowing you off or something, and maybe they're not even nice about it. Don't go over their head. That is a sure way of making an enemy forever in an organization. And that person will probably travel from organization to organization. So don't ever do anything like that. It just, maybe that's just not going to be the organization you're going to work with, unfortunately. Or it's just going to be a longer time. You can, make sure they understand that you're their friend. You're there to make them look good. The person that's in-house that you're dealing with, you're there to make them look good.
All right, let's see. Oh, on that question, I would say be careful how you present yourself. So when it comes time to say, hey, could you guys provide me access to Search Console or Google Analytics? Have a professional email address. Don't ask them to add rainbow unicorn 37 at gmail.com. Because they're not going to know who that is later when the engagement ends. They're going to be like, who's Rainbow Unicorn 37? We have no idea.
That's a really good point, Ted. We're clearing out right this last week. I just started clearing out our Search Console access, and you want to guess the emails that all got hacked, axed without any consideration? Gmails. If you were a Gmail, I've already made the rule. There's no Gmails allowed on our Search Console access because I can't. There's no control. There's no security, and I didn't ask. I just did it, and someone lost access and doesn't know they lost access. Um, but yeah, that's a really, really good point. And the professional email too is important.
Yeah. And the other thing is don't come in demanding technical access. So if you have an enterprise client and you say, well, I need edit privileges to your web application, you don't know. That might be source controlled with staging servers. You would have to have GitHub or some other repository system. You would have to put things into staging, and then only then could it be deployed to production. You might be asking for something that you aren't technically prepared to handle, and B, they would never give you because of PCI compliance or HIPAA compliance or some other regulatory compliance. They couldn't risk it. And so just know that there's these compliance layers where you, as an outsider, could never have the keys to the kingdom. They'll never allow it. And if you demand it and they can't allow it, then it's like, sorry, we'll have to go with somebody else. So you have to be careful about what you ask for because that could kill the deal. Um, All right. So let's see. Mark is asking, what are the pros and cons for both local and enterprise? Lots of hand holding at the local level, lots of politics at the enterprise. I'd say a lot of hand holding at the enterprise too.
Definitely.
People scared to lose their jobs. Well, here's the thing. Yeah. In the enterprise, there's kind of a bit of, fear of being fired, fear of being downsized. But the truth is a client SEO, as an SEO consultant, you are actually losing clients way faster than the enterprise is getting fired. So as the local SEO consultant, odds are you're getting fired multiple times a year, and the enterprise SEO isn't. So in terms of who should be afraid to lose a client, uh, you know, probably the small agency SEO, the SEO consultant should rationally have more fear than the enterprise. Now, it feels different because you only have one client in the enterprise situation, and so that feels like it's more risky. If there's only one and this ratio continues, well, no, the enterprise is likely to give you a year or two to prove yourself out. They're not going to fire you in 3 months unless you're causing serious HR concerns. So if you can avoid serious HR concerns, you probably got a year or two to prove some value.
See, some
Um,
large companies can't even just fire you. A lot of large companies, they have to put you through a whole performance review process, which you're going to see coming months in advance. So that's a benefit, I guess.
as uh, as an SEO consultant, though, you kind of have more control over your take-home income. So
Mhm.
you can decide that you're going to increase your rates for new clients. All right. You can decide that you're going to increase your rates for existing clients. You have these controls. And so in that way, you can kind of earn what the market will bear. In the corporate ladder, once you're hired, you're probably only going to see 2 to 5% raises if you do amazing work. And so that's much slower growth. You're probably gonna increase your pay slower than inflation.
Yeah.
Um,
The
but
chances
you
of the chances of my salary doubling or tripling this time next year, it's pretty much non-existent. Whereas someone who does their own agency, they could double or triple relatively easily. Uh, so yeah, that is a
Yeah,
benefit.
and it's not uncommon in our industry for SEOs to figure it out and to do $500,000 a year.
Yeah.
Like that, there's a lot of those stories out there. But in the corporate world, nobody ever offered me $500,000 a year to do the job. I had to get into commission SEO to even approach that, and commission SEO has its own set of problems. So that complicates it all and makes it even harder. It's doable, but man, you have to have thick skin. All right, so need to put this person in the locker. We'll put him in there for a day. All right. So, appreciate that question. Wrong show. All right. Let's see. Do you have any more pros and cons, or should we move on?
Probably move on. I mean,
Okay.
we could do a whole show of just pros and cons, I guess.
All right, so I did SEO for the biggest CBD company in the US, and the politics were insane. Well, yeah, because they had very careful lines they can't cross. And so yeah, that gets into regulatory considerations, and if you don't understand the regulations, that's going to be very hard for you. So if you have a client that has regulatory concerns, it really benefits you a ton to go read the regulations. And so that's a lot of what I had to do. When I was in ecom, I had to understand all of the PCI compliance terms. Because then I could say, no, I know this is a great sounding idea, but it's going to be a no ultimately because of the PCI compliance. So yeah, you got to get ahead of it. Let's see, from an engineering perspective, how can the algorithm know if a piece of content is helpful? I have a theory on this, not proven, but I witnessed it with my own eyes. And so that's about as good as it gets in SEO, in my opinion, is behaviors and features you can witness with your own eyes and measure. And so what I saw Google doing, this was in the keyword space of nutritional supplements and protein powders, stuff like that. I saw that Google was finding on page, this was not schema, they were finding pros and cons to these supplements. They were finding common problems. They were finding common benefits. They are finding this information, and they would itemize it in the search results summary. They would parse it out and itemize it in the search result summary. And I've seen this feature ebb and flow where they use it a lot or they use it a little. And so it seems to be a knob they can dial up and down. So if they can find helpful information, they can parse helpful information, they can store helpful information, and then they can present that helpful information back in the results, then there's only one last leap of faith to make. So all of that is proven, see it with your own eyes type of stuff. The leap of faith is they go one step further and score with it. That's the part you have. Would they go one step further and score with it? Because I've seen it in the search results. So they looked for it, they found it, they parsed it, they stored it, and then they presented it. How much of a leap of faith is it that they would score with it? That's my theory. But I can't prove that last part. I can prove all of it except that last part. So that's the leap of faith. What do you think helpful content is, Charles?
Sorry, I was muted. I'll be honest, I've gotten very suspicious of what helpful content is. I think it's more of a smokescreen. I'm not sure there's a part of the algorithm that actually says something's helpful. I think it's just them trying to convince folks don't use AI, don't use spam content. I think it's more of a psyop from Google than an actual mathematical calculation. I could be wrong.
All right. What do you think the three parts of the latest what do you think of the three parts of the latest Google update? Expired domain abuse, scaled content abuse, site reputation abuse. Well, I mean, Google's not going to look well going after those things because how many companies have been acquired? Those are expired domains. How many domains have been used in the past? Just about all the good ones. You know? Which companies want to scale their content? It's like just about all of them want to, and a lot of them are, and many of them already have. Who wants better reputation and will have campaigns to improve reputation? That's everybody.
Yeah,
So you can imagine the dumpster fire, right?
these new rules. So first of all, I'm not 100% sure it's part of the algorithm. It's just the new things they put into their spam policies. But I know they specifically called out coupon sites and coupon sites on news sites. They specifically called that out. One of our competitors has a coupons dot subdomain. But my question always is, Google, why is that so bad? Like, how is their coupon site worse than the other regular coupon
Well,
sites?
let's look at the history. Let's see how the world changed. So let's go, early internet, pre-internet. Where did we find coupons?
Hmm.
It's in the newspaper.
In the newspapers. Yep.
So what the hell, Google? You're telling newspapers that they can't do the thing they always did?
Right.
Go to hell, Google. Go to hell.
And it's not like
Crazy.
what it's, and again, I'm going to stick up for my competitor on this one. It's not like their site is horribly low quality and the folks that are focusing on this are really great websites. It's the same site. It looks exactly the same. So why is one bad and one good? I don't understand the logic other than that. I understand why they're doing it because Google can't stop it because the domain has such authority. It's boosting these things up and they're trying to make it look like people can't manipulate Google. I
Yeah.
understand that. I'm just saying that their logic, their explanation makes no sense to me.
Yeah, nobody elected Google to be the internet police. If you
Yeah,
want to run a coupon site, Google needs to shut the hell up because
yeah,
that's freedom of speech, freedom of action, freedom of purpose. It's not a crime. There's nothing immoral about coupons. So if Google's going to punish that, that's on Google. Give them
yeah,
hell.
yeah.
Um, all right. So let's see. Can I trust the tool Systrix when it comes to a website's visibility? Do you know how they calculate visibility? So that's probably like a, reach or an exposure type of metric. You got to be careful with these third-party tools. Like a lot of people would buy and sell websites based on what these third-party tools would say about how big they are. And a lot of those tools can be gamed in different ways to have amazing scores. Back in the day, all the domain tools would talk about the reach and the traffic, but all you had to do to get those amazing numbers was point the domain at a website that had those numbers. All right. And then when you go to sell it, you stop and you'd have 2 weeks of the good numbers for the sale. And it was a scam, it's a fraud. And so if you're buying and selling websites, you need something better and verifiable. So, get access to Google Analytics before writing the check. Get something more concrete than a third party that can be gamed. And I'm not saying their tool is bad or doesn't work, but oftentimes these weird third-party domain tools, they can be exploited. What's the best tool to check visibility progress? You have any thoughts on that? How do you figure out if your brand is getting more broad exposure?
I actually really like using visibility from Search Console. And then when you see it go up and go down, then you have to understand, is it because of more keywords, better ranking on a few small keywords? Like there's a lot of parts that make visibility go up and down. But that's my number one metric is, are we going in the right direction or the wrong direction? And as far as these third-party tools, I'm not a big fan of them, but if you're going to use them, just make sure you're comparing apples to apples. So if I'm using Citrix on my competitor, I have to compare it to myself on Citrix. I can't take SEMrush or our personal or our own internal data and compare it to Citrix, because now you've compared two totally different numbers, and you'll fool yourself.
All right. Do links from pages with traffic help you rank higher, or is it just the backlinks that help? Well, it's going to be a combination of factors. And so people try to reduce it down to a one-dimensional thing because it's kind of easier to wrap your mind around, but it's not a one-dimensional thing. So we know that the page being contextually about the keyword you're trying to rank for makes the link work better, and the anchor text being about the topic your keyword is trying to rank for makes the link work better. And so we know that garbage links that have no context do the worst, they do the least. um so does traffic on a contextual page help it do better? Probably. I'd imagine that being plausible, but I'd also imagine that being something that Google dials up and dials down. Like, how much of that is in the mix? And we might be at a point where that's at a very low amount in the mix and would be hard to measure. I wouldn't say we're in a climate where CTR for organic web search is at a high setting. I don't believe that's true in the current climate. Um, so, you know, I'd, I'd say it's not a bad thing. It's not something I would fix. Um, let's see. If you were to design an SEO mug, what would you write on it that inspires you every morning? Mine would say, and. And if you know, you know. So what would
No,
you put on a mug?
it's easy. SEO Fight Club.
Oh yeah, that'd be a good one too. The other side should say SEO Fight Club.
There you go. There you go.
All right, I think that's it. So any last thoughts, Charles?
No, I think that the only thing is, yeah, I've made this statement before. Sometimes the grass is always greener. In-house want to be agency, agency want to be independent, independent want to be in-house. Um, you find what you like to do, and more importantly, find what you don't like to do. I think that's the key. If there are certain things you don't like to do, use that to determine whether you should be agency or consulting or small business or large business, e-commerce, or figure out what you don't enjoy, and then just avoid that part. Find a way that you can, do the SEO that you enjoy and not do the other things you don't enjoy.
And one last question came in. Do you have any thoughts of how to successfully do programmatic SEO for local searches like directory sites? For example, on how to make sure that Google sees the pages as unique. And so, great question. I would tell you to separate the concerns. So, your database driven website has main content, and the main content is informational and probably thin or very data oriented. So, what you should think about horizontally across all the categories is relevant supplemental content that's unique to each page. You need to engineer horizontal content. So if it's a directory site and you are showing, plumbers, let's say in Urbana, Illinois, in one of the categories, and you list all the plumbers in Urbana, Illinois. What can you do on this page? You could have supplemental content about historic landmarks in Urbana, Illinois, good places to eat in Urbana, Illinois. You could have supplemental content about what are some things to consider when selecting a plumber in Urbana, Illinois. Because plumbers in Urbana, Illinois, they might have different concerns. Like they're might be harder to get when the university is in session, because then the population of the town doubles on them instantly. You got a bunch of people coming in all at once, finding out their plumbing isn't right. They have a surge in plumbing when people come back into town. So, there's probably supplemental content for all of these locations that would be unique for each location that would make your pages unique. And you don't have to work it into the main content. Any thoughts you have, Charles?
I mean, Google wouldn't like it, but I'd say that's your supplemental content is exactly where AI becomes helpful. I'm not saying let AI run and do its own thing, but that's where it actually comes helpful, and then the human editor can review it and make sure that it actually reads good. But I just in general agree with you.
Yep. All right. Thank you, everyone. We will see you next week. We'll have Lee back then. He was traveling today. So take care, everyone.